Captain Vexlin stood on the bridge of the Healing Wind and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. His forearms moved quickly between different control panels, but nothing he did made any difference. The ship was dying, and he knew it. Behind him, the communications officer called out another update about the fusion core. And the news was worse than before. The Healing Wind was a medical frigate, designed to carry wounded soldiers and refugees to safety. Right now, it carried 847 people who had fled from the Kesari colonies after the war destroyed their homes. These people had already lost everything. They trusted Vexlin to take them somewhere safe. Now he was going to fail them. The fusion core had been acting strange for 2 days, but Vexlin thought they could make it to port before anything serious happened. He was wrong. 3 hours ago, the magnetic containment started failing. Once that process began, nothing could stop it. The core would tear itself apart, and when it did, the explosion would leave nothing behind except scattered atoms. Chief Engineer Krathos climbed onto the bridge. She was a crystalline being from the Lithos Collective, and her body glowed with internal light that pulsed in patterns when she spoke. Right now, those pulses were rapid and erratic, showing her stress. She approached Vexlin, and the light patterns formed words that the translation system converted to speech. The containment will fail completely in approximately 4 hours. There is nothing more I can do. The damage is too extensive. We need a completely new core assembly, and we are 3 weeks from the nearest station. Vexlin felt his heart sink. He had commanded ships for 40 years and never lost one. The thought of all those refugees dying in the cold darkness of space made him feel sick. He looked at Krathos and asked if there was any chance at all. She dimmed for a moment, which meant she was thinking hard. Then her lights pulsed again. Even if we had the parts and a full engineering team, we would need at least 12 hours to replace the damaged components. We do not have the parts, we do not have the time, and the radiation levels in the core chamber are already lethal. I am sorry, Captain. I have failed. Vexlin placed one hand on her crystalline shoulder. You have not failed. The core was damaged in that pirate attack 2 days ago. You kept it running long enough to get us this far. Now we must prepare our passengers for what comes next. Medical Officer Senna entered the bridge. She was an Avari healer with silver feathers and large eyes that could see into the ultraviolet spectrum. She moved with the grace of a bird and carried herself with a calmness that usually helped everyone around her feel better. But today even she looked frightened. Captain, the refugees are starting to panic. They can feel the ship getting colder. Some of the children are having trouble breathing because the air recyclers are failing. What should I tell them? Vexlin had no good answer. He could lie and say everything would be fine, but these people deserved the truth. He could tell them they were going to die, but that would cause complete chaos. He settled for something in between. Tell them we have sent out a distress call and are doing everything possible to fix the problem. Keep them calm for as long as you can. Focus on the children and the elderly first. Senna nodded and left the bridge. Vexlin watched her go and felt the weight of command crushing down on him. He had sent the distress call 3 hours ago, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. No one had answered. The Valorian fleet was engaged in a major battle 3 systems away. The nearest civilian ships would take at least 5 days to reach them. They had 4 hours left. The ship groaned around them, the metal hull contracting as the temperature dropped. The fusion core provided power and heat to the entire vessel. As it failed, the ship was becoming a frozen coffin drifting through the emptiness of the outer drift. This region of space was known for being dangerous, with pirates and stellar anomalies making it a place most ships avoided. The Healing Wind had come this way because it was the shortest route to safety. Now it would be their grave. Vexlin walked to his command chair and sat down heavily. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. They all knew what was happening. They all knew they were going to die. But they kept working because that was what spacers did. They kept their posts until the end. The communications officer suddenly sat up straight. Captain, I am receiving a response to our distress call. Vexlin felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. Who is it? How far away are they? The officer worked at his console for a moment, then looked up with confusion on his face. The signal identifies itself as the UESS Defiance, flagship of the 3rd Human Expeditionary Fleet. They say they received our distress call and are inbound. Captain, they say their estimated arrival time is 47 minutes. That is impossible. Vexlin stood up and walked to the communications station. The nearest human fleet is 6 light-years away. Even with quantum displacement drives, that journey takes at least 2 days. Are you certain about this signal? The officer checked again. I am certain, Captain. The authentication codes are valid. It is definitely a human military vessel, and they are definitely claiming they will be here in 47 minutes. But I do not understand how that is possible. Vexlin did not understand it either. Humans were newcomers to galactic civilization, arriving only 15 years ago with fusion drive ships that seemed primitive compared to the quantum technology most species used. Everyone had been polite to humanity, but most people considered them to be at least a century behind the major civilizations in terms of technology. The idea that they could cross 6 light years in under an hour was absurd. A voice came through the communication system, speaking in clear galactic standard with a human accent. Healing Wind, this is Commander Kate Morrison of the United Earth spaceship Defiance. We have received your distress call and are responding. Please send us all available data on your fusion core failure. Our chief engineer will review it during our approach. Hold on. Help is coming. The voice was calm and confident, like someone who did this kind of thing every day. Vexlin wanted to believe, but the math simply did not work. He ordered the communications officer to send all the engineering data anyway. Even if the humans could not arrive in time, at least someone would know what happened to the Healing Wind. Krathos pulsed urgent light patterns. Captain, the core degradation is accelerating. We now have approximately 90 minutes until catastrophic failure, not 4 hours. Something has changed in the reaction chamber. Vexlin closed his eyes for a moment. Even if the humans somehow arrived in 47 minutes as promised, they would have less than an hour to do something about a failing fusion core. And what could they do? The Healing Wind was a massive ship. They could not tow it. They could not transfer nearly 1,000 people to another vessel in less than an hour. Even if the humans had the most advanced technology in the galaxy, which they definitely did not, there was simply no time. But Commander Morrison had said help was coming. She had said to hold on, and in her voice Vexlin had heard something he recognized from his own years of command. She was not lying. She was not offering false hope. She believed she could save them. Vexlin sat down in his command chair and pulled up the tactical display. A single icon showed the approaching human vessel, moving faster than anything he had ever seen. The speed was impossible. The distance was impossible. Everything about this situation was impossible, but the icon kept getting closer. And in the background, through the hull of the ship, Vexlin could hear the fusion core beginning to whine with the high-pitched sound that every spacer knew meant death was approaching. He looked at the timer on his console. 87 minutes until core breach. 41 minutes until the humans arrived, if they arrived. The bridge crew worked in tense silence. Senna called up from the medical bay to report that 3 elderly refugees had gone into cardiac arrest from the stress and cold. She had stabilized them for now, but they needed proper medical facilities soon. The temperature on the ship was dropping fast. People were starting to die even before the core exploded. Vexlin made a ship-wide announcement. All crew and passengers, this is the captain. I want you to know that help is coming. A human fleet has responded to our distress call and will arrive within the hour. I need everyone to remain calm and help each other stay warm. We are going to survive this. He hoped he was telling the truth. He hoped the impossible was about to become possible. Because if it did not, 847 people were about to die in the darkness of space, and Vexlin would die knowing he had given them false hope at the end. The tactical display updated. Human vessel arrival in 38 minutes. Core breach in 83 minutes. The race was on, and everything depended on whether humans could really do the impossible. Space itself seemed to scream when the human fleet arrived. Vexlin had seen quantum displacement jumps before, where ships slipped elegantly from one point in space to another with barely a ripple. This was nothing like that. 3 kilometers from the Healing Wind, reality tore open like a wound. Brilliant blue light flooded the view screen, and every sensor on the bridge went momentarily insane with readings that made no sense. Then the light faded, and 12 human warships hung in space around them. The largest vessel, the UESS Defiance, was enormous. It was bigger than any Valorian warship Vexlin had ever seen, covered in armor plating that looked thick enough to stop a meteor strike. Weapons covered its hull, and they were not the elegant energy weapons most civilizations used. These were massive railguns and missile batteries that looked brutal and efficient. Captain Vexlin, this is Commander Morrison. We are in position and beginning rescue operations. Please stand by. Vexilin stared at the human ships on his view screen and felt his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. They had actually done it. They had crossed impossible distances in impossible time, and arrived exactly when they said they would. The human fleet formed a protective circle around the healing wind, their sensors sweeping the area for threats. "Commander Morrison," Vexilin said, his voice rough with emotion, "I do not know how you got here, but I am grateful beyond words. However, I must inform you that our fusion core will fail in approximately 70 minutes. I do not see how even you can help us in that time." Morrison appeared on his view screen. She was younger than Vexilin expected, perhaps only 30 human years old. She had short, dark hair and green eyes that looked tired but determined. She wore a blue uniform with rank insignia that marked her as a senior commander. "Captain, my chief engineer has reviewed your data. He believes he can stabilize your core, but we need to get inside your engineering section immediately. We are launching a boarding shuttle now. Please clear a path to your core chamber." Before Vexilin could respond, Krathos pulsed urgent light. "Captain, the conditions in the core chamber are lethal. Radiation levels are high enough to kill any organic being in seconds. The temperature is over 300 degrees. Even I can only survive there for a few minutes at most." Morrison heard this and nodded. "Our team is equipped for those conditions. Trust us, Captain. We have done this before." A human shuttle detached from the Defiance and crossed to the healing wind in less than 2 minutes. It docked at the cargo bay, and Vexilin ordered his security team to escort the humans to engineering. He watched on the internal monitors as 6 figures in massive powered armor suits walked through his ship. The suits were incredible. Each one stood 3 meters tall and was covered in thick armor plating. They moved smoothly despite their size, and the humans inside them seemed completely comfortable. The lead engineer, a man named Ryan Walsh, raised one armored hand in greeting as he passed the security team. Krathos met them at the entrance to the engineering section. Up close, the human suits were even more impressive. They had tools built into the arms, sensor arrays on the helmets, and power cores on the backs that radiated enough energy to run a small shuttle. Walsh knelt down to bring his helmet closer to Krathos's level. "I am Ryan Walsh, chief engineer of the Defiance. My team and I are going to save your ship. Can you show us to the core chamber?" Krathos pulsed light patterns that showed her amazement. "The radiation levels will kill you." Walsh patted his armored chest. "These suits are designed for working in Jupiter's radiation belts back in our home system. Your core is putting out a lot of radiation, but we can handle it. Lead the way." They moved through the engineering section toward the core chamber. As they got closer, the temperature increased and warning lights flashed everywhere. The doors to the core chamber were sealed, and radiation warnings covered them in 3 languages. Walsh examined the doors for a moment, then his team used cutting tools to open them manually. Hot air rushed out, carrying waves of heat that distorted the air. Through the opening, Vexilin could see the fusion core. It was glowing an angry red color, and plasma leaked from several containment seals. The magnetic fields that normally held the fusion reaction in check were failing, and the entire chamber was filled with deadly radiation. The human team walked inside without hesitation. Vexilin watched on monitors as they moved through conditions that should have killed them instantly. Their suits protected them, but he could see warning indicators on their armor showing that even these incredible machines were being pushed to their limits. Walsh stood in front of the core and studied it for a long moment. Then he started calling out orders to his team. They moved with practiced efficiency, pulling tools from their suits and working on different parts of the damaged core. Krathos watched from the doorway, her light patterns showing disbelief at what she was seeing. "Captain," Walsh said over the communication system, "we need to implement what we call a hard shutdown. Basically, we are going to force your core into a contained state using portable magnetic bottles. The problem is that we need a lot of power to make it work, more power than your systems can provide right now." "Where will you get the power?" Vexilin asked. Walsh looked directly at one of the cameras. "From my suit. These power cores are designed to run for weeks of combat operations. I can channel that energy into the magnetic containment system. It should be enough to stabilize your core." Krathos pulsed a warning. "If you do that and something goes wrong, your suit's power core could explode. It would be like setting off a small nuclear weapon inside our ship." Walsh nodded inside his helmet. "I know the risks, but if I do nothing, your core explodes anyway and everyone dies. This way we have a chance. I will take that chance. He moved to a control panel and started making connections between his suit and the ship's systems. The other human engineers positioned equipment around the core, setting up what looked like a portable containment field. Vexlin realized they had brought this equipment with them, which meant they had anticipated exactly this situation. On my mark, Walsh said to his team, 3, 2, 1, engage. The ship shuddered as power flowed from Walsh's suit into the magnetic containment system. The portable equipment activated, creating a web of magnetic fields that wrapped around the failing core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the core began to pulse with a different rhythm, more controlled and less chaotic. It is working, Kratos pulsed in amazement. The containment fields are stabilizing. The reaction is coming back under control, but Walsh was not done. He adjusted settings on his suit, pushing more power into the system. His armor began to glow from the heat and warning alarms sounded. The other engineers moved closer to him, ready to pull him back if something went wrong. Just a little more, Walsh muttered. Come on, hold together. The core gave one final shudder. Then the angry red glow began to fade to a more normal orange color. The temperature reading started to drop. The radiation levels decreased. The magnetic containment field solidified into stable configurations. Walsh held the connection for another 30 seconds, then carefully disconnected his suit from the ship's systems. Core is stable, he announced. You are not going to explode today, Captain. Your ship is safe. Vexlin felt his legs go weak with relief. Around him, the bridge crew began to cheer. Down in the passenger sections, refugees who had been preparing to die suddenly found themselves with a future again. Senna called from the medical bay with tears in her voice, reporting that the temperature was already rising, and the air recyclers were coming back online. Walsh and his team walked out of the core chamber. Their armor was scorched and damaged, covered in burns from the extreme conditions. Walsh's suit in particular looked barely functional, with warning lights flashing all over it. But they had succeeded. They had done the impossible. Kratos approached Walsh as he removed his helmet. He was a human male with brown hair and a friendly face that showed exhaustion, but also satisfaction. She pulsed light at him. You risked your life for people you have never met. Why? Walsh smiled. Because you needed help and we could provide it. That is reason enough. Besides, this is what we do. Humans have always helped each other in emergencies. Now that we are part of the galactic community, we help everyone. Vexlin met the human team in the cargo bay as they prepared to return to their shuttle. He wanted to find words adequate to express his gratitude, but his vocabulary seemed insufficient. Walsh saved him the trouble by extending one armored hand. Your ship is going to need proper repairs at a station, Captain. We will escort you to the nearest facility. It is the least we can do. Vexlin took the offered hand carefully. You have already done more than anyone could ask. You saved 847 lives today. Walsh shrugged. All in a day's work. The Defiance and her fleet will maintain position around you until we get you somewhere safe. Commander Morrison takes her escort duties seriously. As the human team boarded their shuttle and returned to the Defiance, Vexlin stood in the cargo bay and watched them go. His ship had been failing, dying in the darkness with no hope of rescue. Then the human fleet had arrived and done what everyone said was impossible. They had crossed incredible distances, survived lethal conditions, and saved everyone aboard without losing a single life. And they acted like it. The human fleet maintained its protective formation around the healing wind for the next 8 hours, while Kratos and Walsh worked together to stabilize the remaining ship systems. During that time, Vexlin sent his official report to Valorian Command, but he also found himself unable to stop thinking about what had happened. The humans had saved them, but the how and why of it challenged everything he thought he knew about humanity. Commander Morrison accepted his invitation to come aboard the Healing Wind. She arrived with 2 security personnel, both humans in light armor who moved with the controlled alertness of professional soldiers. Morrison herself wore a dress uniform that looked crisp and formal, despite the long hours she must have been awake. Vexlin met her in his ready room. The space was small but comfortable, decorated with memories from his 40 years of service. Morrison looked at the various medals and commendations on the walls with interest before taking the seat he offered. Captain Vexlin, I want to thank you for your hospitality. I know you have questions and I will answer what I can. Vexlin settled into his own chair. Commander, I have so many questions I do not know where to start. How did you cross 27 light years in less than an hour? That should be impossible, Morrison nodded. We use a technology we call hyperspace. It is different from the quantum displacement drives most species use. Instead of carefully stepping from one point in space to another, we basically punch a hole through space-time itself and travel through a dimension where normal physics do not apply. It is dangerous and energy-intensive, but it is very fast. Krathos had explained quantum displacement to Vexlin before. It was elegant and safe, using quantum entanglement to move ships across space without technically crossing the distance between. It was the pinnacle of galactic technology, developed over thousands of years by the most advanced civilizations. The idea that humans had found a completely different solution seemed impossible. How long have you had this technology? Vexlin asked. Morrison smiled slightly. About 8 years. We developed it out of desperation. Our early colony ships used fusion drives and took decades to reach nearby stars. When we discovered the theoretical possibility of hyperspace, we pursued it even though the math said it was incredibly dangerous. We lost several test ships before we figured it out, but once we did, everything changed. Now we can respond to emergencies anywhere in this region of space. Vexlin tried to process this. In 8 years, humanity had gone from slow fusion drives to faster-than-light technology that exceeded anything the galaxy possessed. It was the kind of leap that normally took centuries of development. Why did you come? Vexlin asked quietly. You owe us nothing. The Valorian Confederation has been polite to humanity, but we have not offered any special friendship or alliance. Yet you risked your ships and your lives to save us. Morrison leaned forward. Captain, where I come from, we have a simple philosophy. When someone needs help, you help. It does not matter if they are your friend or a stranger. It does not matter what species they are or what they believe. If they need help and you can provide it, you help. That is what intelligent beings do. But why? Vexlin pressed. What do you gain from this? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Captain, humanity almost destroyed itself multiple times before we reached space. We fought terrible wars. We poisoned our own planet. We nearly went extinct from our own stupidity. We survived only because, at critical moments, people chose to help each other instead of fighting. We learned that cooperation is stronger than competition, that compassion is more valuable than conquest. When we finally reached the stars, we promised ourselves we would bring those lessons with us. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Defiance and the other human ships. Every vessel in our fleet carries advanced rescue equipment. Every captain is trained in emergency response. We have a protocol called the Good Samaritan Doctrine. It requires us to respond to any distress call we can reach, regardless of who sent it or what risks are involved. Some people back home think it is naive. They say we should focus on protecting human interests, but we believe that building a better galaxy means helping everyone, not just ourselves. Vexlin joined her at the window. You said you respond to every distress call you can reach. How many rescues have you performed? Morrison counted in her head. In the past year, 17 rescue operations in this sector alone. Some were successful, like yours. Some we arrived too late. 2 months ago, we lost a ship trying to save a Lithonian colony from a stellar flare. The crew knew it was dangerous, but they went anyway because people needed help. That must weigh heavily on you, Vexlin said. It does, Morrison admitted, but doing nothing would weigh heavier. At least when we try, we give people a chance. That has to mean something. Down in the engineering section, Krathos was having a similar conversation with Walsh. The human engineer had removed his damaged armor and was now working in a simple jumpsuit, helping her repair the Healing Wind's secondary systems. Krathos had never worked with a human before, and she found the experience fascinating. Your approach to engineering is very different from ours. She pulsed to him. We design systems to be efficient and elegant. You design systems to be tough and adaptable. Walsh laughed. Yeah, that is pretty accurate. We learned early on that elegant systems fail in ugly ways. Better to build something that is over-designed and redundant. It might not be pretty, but it keeps working when things go wrong. He showed her the portable magnetic bottle his team had used. It was cobbled together from what looked like spare parts and military equipment, held together with welds that would make any Lithonian engineer cringe. But it had worked perfectly when it mattered most. This device saved our ship, Krathos pulsed. Yet it looks like you built it from scrap. Walsh grinned. That is because we did. The magnetic bottles are designed for containing antimatter in our weapons systems. We repurposed 3 of them and added some power couplers from our shuttle reactors. It is not pretty, but engineering is not about pretty. It is about solving problems with whatever you have available. Krathos found this philosophy refreshing. In Lithonian engineering, everything was planned and precise. The idea of improvising solutions on the spot was considered reckless. But Walsh and his team had improvised their way through an impossible situation and succeeded. Maybe there was something to learn from the human approach. In the medical bay, Senna was working with a human medic named Lisa Chen. Chen was a small woman with kind eyes and quick hands. She moved through the refugee patients with an ease that impressed Senna. The Avari healer had been trained to sense emotions, and she could feel the calm confidence radiating from Chen. Your medical technology is not as advanced as ours, Senna observed, but your patients respond well to you. Chen smiled as she checked on an elderly Kessari refugee. Technology only does so much. Sometimes people just need someone to care about them, to show them they are not alone. That is what healing really is. Senna watched as Chen sat with a young Kessari child who had been traumatized by the war and the near-death experience on the ship. Chen did not try to medicate the child or use advanced therapy techniques. She simply talked to him, sharing stories about her own childhood and listening to his fears. By the time she finished, the child was smiling. "You have a gift," Senna said. Chen shrugged. "I just treat people the way I would want to be treated if I was scared and far from home." Human medicine figured out a long time ago that emotional health is just as important as physical health. We take care of both. Throughout the ship, similar interactions were happening. Human crew members mixed with Valorian crew and Kessari refugees, sharing stories and food and laughter. The refugees who had been in despair just hours ago were beginning to hope again. They saw in these humans something they had lost, the belief that the universe could be kind, that strangers could become friends, that help existed for those who needed it. Tom, the Kessari refugee leader, found himself talking with a human marine named Danny Price. Price was a large man with gentle eyes and a warm smile. He listened as Tom described losing his home, his city, everything he had built over a lifetime. "How do you recover from something like that?" Tom asked. Price thought for a moment. "My great-grandfather lived through what we call World War III. Most of his city was destroyed. His family was scattered. He lost almost everything. But he survived and he helped rebuild. It took years, but eventually things got better. Not the same as before, but better in different ways. Your people will rebuild too. It will take time, but you will get through this." Tom felt tears forming. "How can you be so certain?" Price put a hand on his shoulder. "Because I have seen humanity survive our own worst moments, and I know what intelligent beings are capable of when they work together. Your people are strong. You will find a way forward. And now you know that you are not alone. Humans will help. So will the Valorians. So will every decent species in this galaxy. You just have to keep going." Back in the ready room, Morrison was preparing to return to her ship. Vexlin had one more question. "Commander, what do you hope to gain from all this? Surely there must be some benefit to humanity from these rescue operations?" Morrison paused at the door. "Captain, we hope to build a galaxy where everyone helps everyone else, where no one has to—" 8 hours had passed since the rescue, when the tactical alarms on the Defiance began screaming warnings. Vexlin was resting in his quarters when his communications panel chimed urgently. He answered immediately and found Commander Morrison on the screen, her face calm but serious. "Captain, we have incoming contacts at the edge of the system. 23 vessels and their signatures match known pirate configurations. The lead ship belongs to Scarrick the Red. I believe they were following your ship and waiting for you to become vulnerable." Vexlin felt his blood run cold. Scarrick was infamous throughout this sector. A Varanthian warlord who had been raiding refugee ships and medical transports for years. His fleet was large and well-armed, and he had no mercy for his victims. The Healing Wind, with its cargo of helpless refugees, would have been a perfect target. "Commander," Vexlin said quickly, "you should leave. Your fleet is outnumbered almost 2 to 1. There is no reason for you to die protecting us." Morrison smiled slightly. "Captain, we did not cross 27 light-years and save your ship just to abandon you now. The Healing Wind and everyone aboard are under our protection. We will deal with the pirates." Before Vexlin could argue, Morrison cut the connection. On the Healing Wind's tactical display, he watched the human fleet shift into a combat formation around his ship. The 12 human warships spread out in a pattern that seemed random at first. But Vexlin had commanded ships long enough to recognize a sophisticated defensive screen when he saw one. The pirate fleet approached steadily. Scarek broadcast a message on open channels, his reptilian face appearing on every screen. His scales were a deep red color, giving him his nickname, and his eyes were cold with predatory intelligence. Human vessels, I admire your courage in responding to this distress call, but courage without wisdom is just stupidity. You are outnumbered and outgunned. I offer you safe passage if you leave now. The medical frigate and its cargo are mine. You have 60 seconds to decide. Morrison's response was immediate and broadcast on the same open channel. Scarek, this is Commander Kate Morrison of the United Earth Space Forces. The healing wind is under our protection. Any attempt to attack it will be met with lethal force. I strongly suggest you reconsider your course of action. This is your only warning. Scarek laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. You are either very brave or very foolish, human. Let me teach you about the reality of power in this sector. The pirate fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons and missile salvos erupted from 23 ships simultaneously, a massive barrage designed to overwhelm any defensive system. Vexlin watched in horror, certain he was about to witness the destruction of the fleet that had saved him. Then the human ships activated their defensive systems, and Vexlin saw something he had never witnessed before. Thousands of small railguns emerged from the human vessels, tracking and engaging incoming threats with computer-assisted precision. The missile salvos were cut down in mid-flight, detonating in brilliant flashes of light that briefly outshone the distant stars. The plasma bolts that made it through the defensive screen struck human armor plating and splashed harmlessly against surfaces designed to withstand conditions far worse than weapons fire. The pirates were using technology that could cut through most ship hulls. Against the humans, their weapons might as well have been throwing rocks. Then the humans returned fire. The sound of railguns launching projectiles resonated through space, picked up by the healing wind sensors as vibrations in the electromagnetic spectrum. Vexlin had studied human weapons technology and knew they used kinetic projectiles instead of energy weapons. What he had not understood was how devastating those projectiles could be. Solid slugs accelerated to incredible velocities punched through pirate vessels like they were made of paper. Ships that had seemed threatening moments before suddenly found themselves with massive holes torn through their hulls, atmosphere venting into space and systems failing catastrophically. In the first exchange, 4 pirate ships were disabled or destroyed. Scarek clearly had not expected this level of resistance. His fleet attempted to adapt, spreading out to attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. It was a standard pirate tactic, using superior numbers to overwhelm a smaller force. But the humans were not a standard force. 3 human vessels suddenly vanished from their positions. For a moment, Vexlin thought they had been destroyed, but then they reappeared in different locations, having used their hyperspace drives for tactical jumps. The maneuver was incredibly dangerous and violated every principle of safe hyperspace navigation, but it was also devastatingly effective. The pirates trying to flank the human formation suddenly found themselves facing enemies they thought were kilometers away. The battle became chaos. The pirates were experienced fighters, but they were trained to fight conventional opponents using conventional tactics. The humans were anything but conventional. They moved like nothing Vexlin had seen before, using their speed and maneuverability to devastating effect while maintaining perfect coordination with each other. Krathos appeared on Vexlin's bridge, her light patterns showing amazement. Captain, the humans are using quantum-encrypted tactical networks. Each ship is sharing targeting data and coordinating movements in real time. They are fighting as a single organism with 12 bodies. One of the human ships, the UESS Resolute, took a direct hit from a concentrated barrage. The impact was massive, enough to crack through even her heavy armor. Damage reports flooded in, and Vexlin saw that her hyperspace drive was disabled. The Resolute was now trapped in normal space, unable to perform the tactical jumps that gave the human fleet its advantage. Morrison immediately adjusted her formation, pulling the Defiance and 2 other ships back to protect the damaged Resolute. It meant weakening their overall defensive position, but the humans clearly operated under a doctrine that left no one behind. Even in the middle of a desperate battle, they prioritized protecting their own. A human fighter pilot, Lieutenant Greg Haynes, was flying close support around the healing wind when a wave of missiles broke through the defensive screen and headed directly for Vexlin's ship. Haynes positioned his fighter directly in their path and activated every weapon his small craft possessed. He destroyed most of the missiles, but one got through his defenses and struck his fighter's engines. Vexilin watched helplessly as the fighter spiraled toward the healing wind, trailing fire and debris. If it crashed into the medical frigate, the damage could be catastrophic. But at the last moment, Haynes ejected, his escape pod shooting away from the doomed fighter. The fighter itself missed the healing wind by less than 50 meters, tumbling past into empty space. Walsh was still aboard the healing wind, overseeing repairs. He was on the communications system instantly, coordinating Haynes's recovery. A human search and rescue craft launched from the Defiance, flying through active weapons fire to retrieve the escape pod. Within minutes, Haynes was safely aboard, and the rescue craft was returning to its mothership. The humans had conducted a full rescue operation in the middle of a battle without missing a beat. Scarrick realized he was losing. More than half his fleet was disabled or destroyed, and his remaining ships were taking damage faster than they could inflict it. In desperation, he made one final attempt. His flagship, a massive dreadnought mounting a siege plasma cannon, charged directly toward the healing wind. The cannon was designed to crack orbital platforms and could easily vaporize a medical frigate. Morrison saw the threat. The Defiance moved to intercept, placing itself between the dreadnought and the helpless healing wind. For a terrible moment, Vexilin thought he was about to watch the human flagship be destroyed while protecting his ship. Then Morrison gave an order that made even her own crew hesitate. She commanded a point-blank hyperspace jump, materializing the Defiance directly in front of Scarrick's charging dreadnought. The maneuver was insane, violating every safety protocol for hyperspace navigation. The spatial distortion caused by jumping so close to another large vessel damaged both ships, buckling armor plates and overloading systems, but it achieved Morrison's goal. Scarrick was forced to divert. His plasma cannon shot missing the healing wind by hundreds of meters and dissipating harmlessly into space. The dreadnought careened past the Defiance, its helm control damaged by the spatial distortion, and tumbled away from the combat zone. The remaining pirate ships broke formation and fled. They had come expecting an easy target and found themselves fighting an opponent that defied everything they knew about warfare. Scarrick's dreadnought limped away through quantum displacement, damaged but intact. Morrison did not pursue. Her mission was protecting the healing wind, not hunting pirates. As the battle ended, Vexilin surveyed the damage. The healing wind was intact with no casualties among crew or refugees. The human fleet had taken damage, but no ships were lost. The Resolute would need extensive repairs, but her crew was safe. Most remarkably, the humans immediately began rescue operations for survivors from the disabled pirate vessels. Even their enemies received medical attention and were taken into custody, rather than left to die. Vexilin called Morrison. The Defiance's bridge showed signs of battle damage, with sparks occasionally flying from damaged consoles and CI. The journey to Velor Prime took 2 weeks, and during that time, something remarkable happened aboard the healing wind. The human fleet maintained its protective escort, and the daily interactions between humans and the various species aboard the medical frigate created bonds that transcended simple gratitude. Krathos spent every spare moment with Walsh and his engineering team, learning about human approaches to solving problems. The humans were generous with their knowledge, showing her techniques and technologies that the Lithonian collective had never considered. In return, she taught them about crystalline computing systems and resonance-based power generation. The exchange was equal, both sides learning from each other. Tom and the other Kasari refugees formed deep friendships with the human crew. They shared meals together, exchanged stories about their homes, and found comfort in the realization that loss and survival were universal experiences. The humans spoke about Earth's history with an honesty that was refreshing, not hiding their own failures and conflicts, but showing how they had learned from them. One evening in the recreation area, a human Marine named Julie Sanders brought out a small device that played music from Earth. The songs were strange to alien ears at first, with rhythms and melodies that did not follow familiar patterns, but the emotions in them were clear. Songs about struggle and hope, about losing everything and finding the strength to rebuild, about standing together when the world fell apart. The refugees listened with tears running down their faces, understanding every word even though the language was foreign. Pain was universal, Hope was universal. And the message in those songs that you could survive anything if you refused to give up resonated with people who had lost their homes but not their will to live. Senna continued working with Lisa Chen and the other human medics. She discovered that humans approached healing differently from the Avari. Where Avari medicine focused on spiritual balance and natural harmony, human medicine was aggressive and interventionist. They did not accept that any condition was hopeless, always searching for treatments and solutions. Several refugees who Senna had believed were beyond help showed improvement under human care. But more than the techniques, Senna was impressed by the human attitude. Chen and her colleagues treated every patient with the same care and attention, whether they were Valorian crew or Kasari refugees, or even the captured pirates who were being held in the medical bay. To the humans, everyone deserved healing regardless of who they were or what they had done. During the journey, Vexilin worked on his official report to Valorian Command. He knew this document would be read by the highest levels of government and would shape how his people understood humanity. He wrote carefully, describing not just the technical aspects of the rescue and battle, but the philosophy behind human actions. He included detailed data on hyperspace technology, noting how it gave humans strategic mobility that exceeded anything in the galaxy. He documented their military capabilities, the advanced armor and weapon systems that made their ships nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. He described their tactical doctrine, the way they used computer networks to coordinate fleet actions with inhuman precision. But more importantly, he wrote about what he had learned about human character. He described their immediate response to the distress call, crossing impossible distances without hesitation. He detailed how they had risked their lives in lethal conditions to save strangers. He explained their refusal to abandon anyone, even in the middle of battle, and their compassion that extended even to defeated enemies. He concluded his report with a formal recommendation. The Valorian Confederation should pursue a comprehensive alliance with humanity, not out of political convenience or economic benefit, but because humanity represented something the galaxy desperately needed. They were living proof that advanced technology and military power could be combined with genuine compassion and a commitment to helping others. His final paragraph would later be quoted in diplomatic speeches and historical texts across the galaxy. We welcomed humanity to our community as students who needed to learn from older civilizations. This was arrogance born of ignorance. Humanity has lessons to teach us about what civilization truly means. They have shown us that technology without compassion is meaningless, that power without purpose is hollow. They do not need to earn their place among the stars. They have already proven they belong here, not through conquest or achievement, but through simple acts of kindness that reveal the content of their character. When the combined fleet finally arrived at Valor Prime, Vexilin was shocked by the reception. The orbital platforms were crowded with thousands of Valorians who had come to welcome them home. But they were not just there for the healing wind. They were there to greet the human fleet that had saved their people. Morrison received an invitation to meet with the Council of Matriarchs, the highest governing body of the Valorian Confederation. She brought her senior officers planetside, and Vexilin accompanied them through the capital city. Everywhere they went, civilians stopped to cheer and wave. Children held signs thanking the humans. Elderly Valorians bowed in respect to the warriors who had protected their grandchildren. At the formal ceremony, the matriarchs presented Morrison with the Star of Valor, the highest civilian honor their civilization could bestow. It had never been given to a non-Valorian before. Morrison accepted it on behalf of her entire crew, but she made a short speech that surprised everyone. We are honored by this recognition, but we only did what any decent beings would do. When someone calls for help, you answer. When someone is in danger, you protect them. These are not special virtues. They are basic requirements of civilization. We hope that our actions inspire others to do the same. Because the galaxy is a vast and often dangerous place, no one should have to face their darkest hour alone. News of the rescue spread through the galactic community rapidly. The Lithonian Collective sent diplomatic envoys to discuss knowledge exchange programs. The Avari Healing Conclave requested permission to establish joint medical research facilities with human hospitals. Even species that had been dismissive of humanity began reassessing their positions. Not everyone reacted positively. Some civilizations worried about human military capabilities. The Corvin hegemony filed an official protest. claiming that hyperspace technology violated established treaties about weapons development. Several pirate lords put bounties on human ships hoping to capture their technology, but the dominant reaction was respect. Humanity had demonstrated that they were not primitive newcomers but sophisticated equals with unique capabilities and values. More importantly, they had shown a willingness to risk those capabilities for strangers, which earned them something more valuable than respect: trust. The practical effects were immediate. Pirate activity in the Outer Drift dropped to nearly zero. Scarrick and the other raiders realized that the humans had effectively claimed that region as a protection zone, and no one wanted to fight opponents who could appear anywhere at any moment and refuse to be intimidated by numerical superiority. Several species requested human assistance with anti-piracy operations in their own territories. The human response was to propose something larger: a coordinated galactic emergency response system that would respond to any disaster or distress call anywhere in known space. 6 months after the rescue, Commander Morrison stood before the Galactic Assembly to present this proposal. The chamber was filled with representatives from over 50 species, and every one of them listened intently as she spoke. "My people believe that civilizations are measured not by their achievements, but by how they treat those in need. We have the technology to respond to emergencies across vast distances quickly. Other species have different capabilities that complement ours. Together we could create a system that ensures no one faces disaster alone. We propose the Galactic Emergency Response Initiative, a volunteer force drawn from multiple species, equipped and trained to respond to any crisis anywhere in the galaxy." The proposal was debated for 3 days. Some argued it was too expensive. Others worried about sovereignty issues. But in the end, the vote was overwhelmingly in favor. The humans had proven that such a system could work, and more importantly, they had proven that it was worth working toward. 1 year after the rescue of the Healing Wind, a new ship was commissioned. The Gary Horizon was the first vessel of the new initiative, crewed by humans, Valorians, Lithos, Avari, and representatives from a dozen other species. Captain Vexilin commanded it, with Morrison as his executive officer. The ship was responding to its first distress call when Vexilin reflected on how much had changed. He stood on a bridge that mixed technologies from multiple civilizations. His crew represented the best of galactic society, working together with a common purpose. And they were racing toward a colony in crisis, ready to do whatever it took to save them. Walsh reported from engineering that they would arrive in 43 minutes. Krathos confirmed that rescue teams were ready. Senna prepared the medical facilities. Throughout the ship, beings from across the galaxy worked with practiced coordination. Morrison stood beside Vexilin, no longer the captain of a human fleet, but a leader in something larger. When he thanked her again for